3 days had passed since the discovery found the baby Zephyrians. Dr. Lisa Grant barely slept. She spent most of her time in the nursery they had created in the ship's medical bay. The babies were unlike anything she had ever studied. The small creatures were growing fast. They had already doubled in size since being found. But they were still completely gentle. When Lisa walked into the room, all 47 babies would make happy chirping sounds and reach toward her with their tiny paws. "Look at this," Lisa said to Commander Jake Martinez. She held up her scanner and showed him the readings. The babies' brain patterns change when humans are near them. They become calm and their growth rate increases. Jake watched as several crew members fed the babies with bottles. Each baby would only eat when a human was holding them. They refused food from robots or computer systems. "What happens when non-humans try to feed them?" Jake asked. Lisa showed him a video from yesterday. "Watch this." On the screen, one of the ship's alien crew members, a friendly creature called a Velian, tried to give milk to a baby Zephyrian. The baby immediately became upset, crying loudly and pushing the bottle away. "But when I do the same thing," Lisa took over in the video, offering the same bottle. The baby immediately stopped crying and began drinking happily. Maria Santos, the ship's counselor, had been studying the baby's behavior. She sat in a corner of the nursery, writing notes on her computer. "It's not just feeding," Maria said. "The babies sleep better when humans are nearby. Their heart rates are slower and steadier. It's like they feel safe with us." Lieutenant Amy Parker stood by the door, still nervous about having so many alien creatures on the ship. "But why? Adult Zephyrians try to kill humans every chance they get. It doesn't make sense." Before anyone could answer, Ben Torres's voice came over the communication system. "Commander Martinez, please come to the bridge. We have incoming ships." Jake hurried to the bridge, followed by Amy. On the main screen, they could see 5 ships approaching fast. The ships were sleek and white, with the blue symbols of the Galactic Federation. "It's Captain Susan Blake," Ben announced. "She's coming from Earth with a diplomatic team." Captain Blake was a senior officer from Earth's Space Command. She was known for being very smart and for solving difficult problems between different alien races. Her ship, the UES Harmony, was much larger than the Discovery. "Commander Martinez," Captain Blake's voice came through the speakers. "Permission to come aboard. We need to discuss the situation with the Zephyrian infants." An hour later, Captain Blake sat in the Discovery's meeting room with her team. Dr. Carl Newman was a language expert who could speak 12 alien languages. Dr. Helen Ross studied alien cultures and how different races behaved. "The whole galaxy is talking about this," Captain Blake said. She was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and a serious expression. 47 Zephyrian babies found floating in space, and they only respond to humans. "The Galactic Federation is very interested." Dr. Newman leaned forward. "We've been studying the message you received. The Zephyrian language is very difficult, but we think we understand more now. The word you translated as sanctuary has a deeper meaning. It means place of growing or place of becoming." Jake felt uncomfortable. "Are you saying they wanted us to find the babies?" "That's exactly what we're saying," Dr. Ross replied. "But it gets stranger. We've found similar deposits near 3 other human colonies. Same pattern. Baby Zephyrians left in space, always near human settlements." Lisa was shocked. "There are more babies?" Captain Blake nodded. 62 babies total across 4 locations. All healthy, all responding only to human caretakers. "The question is why?" Amy spoke up. "Maybe it's some kind of invasion plan. Maybe the babies are supposed to grow up and attack us from inside." Dr. Ross shook her head. "We've studied Zephyrian biology for decades. These babies are completely normal. No hidden weapons, no unusual genetics. They're just regular Zephyrian infants. Then why leave them with us?" Jake asked. Dr. Newman pulled out his computer and showed them some text. "We've been studying old Zephyrian records that we captured from destroyed ships. There are references to something they call soft fire. It appears to be some kind of energy or feeling that their babies need to grow properly." Lisa was confused. "Soft fire? What does that mean?" "We think it means emotional warmth," Maria Santos said. She had joined the meeting after making sure the babies were sleeping peacefully. "I've been watching how the babies respond to different people. They don't just want food or warmth from humans. They want emotional connection." Captain Blake looked serious. "Dr. Santos, explain what you mean." Maria stood up and moved to the wall screen. She showed brain scans of the baby's Zephyrians. Look at these patterns. When a human holds a baby and talks to it gently, the baby's brain shows increased activity in areas related to learning and growth. When the same baby is with a robot or computer, these areas remain inactive. The babies need love, Lisa said quietly. They need someone to care about them. Dr. Ross was taking notes quickly. This matches some of the cultural records we've studied. Adult Zephyrians are extremely aggressive. Their society values strength and violence above everything else. But what if that same aggression makes it impossible for them to care for their own babies? The room was quiet as everyone thought about this idea. Through the window they could see the stars and the other ships from Captain Blake's fleet. You're saying that Zephyrians are too violent to raise their own children? Jake asked. It's possible, Dr. Newman said. Many predator species on Earth have similar problems. Adult tigers, for example, can accidentally harm their cubs if they're too aggressive during play. Amy was still skeptical. But Zephyrians are intelligent. They have technology and cities. Surely they can control their behavior around babies. Dr. Ross looked at her computer. Actually, our studies suggest they can't. Zephyrian adults have brain structures that make them naturally aggressive. They probably can't turn off their predator instincts even for their own children. Captain Blake stood up. If this is true, then we're looking at something unprecedented. A species that physically cannot care for its own young. Lisa thought about the babies sleeping in the nursery. But they can recognize that humans can care for them. Somehow they knew we would help. The question is how, Ben Torres said. He had been listening quietly from his position at the communication station. How did they know that humans would take care of their babies? Dr. Newman smiled slightly. Maybe they've been watching us longer than we thought. Maybe they've seen how humans behave with children and other helpless creatures. Maria nodded. Humans have a very strong instinct to protect young creatures, even if they're not human. We take care of orphaned animals, abandoned pets, even injured wild creatures that might be dangerous. So they're gambling, Jake said. They're betting that humans will protect their babies even though we're enemies. Captain Blake looked out the window toward the nursery section of the ship. If that's true, then this isn't just about biology. It's about trust. They're trusting us with the most important thing they have, their future. Amy finally looked convinced. And if we take care of their babies, what happens then? Do we raise an army of Zephyrians who might turn against us later? Dr. Ross had been thinking about this question. Or maybe we raise a generation of Zephyrians who understand that humans can be trusted. Maybe this is their way of trying to end the war between our species. Lisa felt a strange excitement. What if this is their way of asking for peace? Not with words or treaties, but by giving us their children? The meeting continued for several more hours, but no one had clear answers. What they did know was that 47 baby Zephyrians were sleeping peacefully in their ship, growing stronger every day under human care. As the diplomatic team prepared to return to their ship, Captain Blake made a decision that would affect the entire galaxy. We're going to keep caring for these babies, she announced, and we're going to find out exactly what the Zephyrians want from us. But we'll do it carefully and we'll be ready for anything. That night, Lisa sat in the nursery watching the babies sleep. They looked so peaceful and innocent. It was hard to believe they would grow up to become the galaxy's most feared predators. But maybe, she thought, they wouldn't have to be. The alarm started screaming at 300 hours ship time. Commander Jake Martinez jumped out of his bed and ran to the bridge. Ben Torres was already at his station, his face pale with fear. Commander, we have a massive ship dropping out of hyperspace, Ben announced. His voice was shaking. It's Zephyrian, and it's huge. On the main screen, a ship appeared that was unlike anything the humans had ever seen up close. The Zephyrian dreadnought was over 2 kilometers long, black as space itself and shaped like a giant claw reaching forward. Its surface was covered with weapon ports and armor plating. This was the Talon of Storms, one of the most feared ships in the galaxy. Lieutenant Amy Parker ran onto the bridge, still putting on her uniform. Battle stations? She asked. Jake stared at the massive ship. It could destroy the Discovery and Captain Blake's entire fleet without breaking a sweat. But something was strange. The ship wasn't moving into attack position. Ben, are they targeting us? Jake asked. Ben checked his instruments carefully. No, sir. Their weapons are powered down. And Commander? They're sending a message. The message came through in the harsh, growling language of the Zephyrians. Ben's computer worked quickly to translate it. The words appeared on the screen. Request permission to board. Peaceful meeting. No weapons. Amy laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Zephyrians asking for permission? That's a first. Captain Susan Blake's voice came through the communication system from her ship. Martinez, what's your status? The Zephyrian ship is requesting permission to board, Jake replied. They claim to be peaceful. There was a long pause before Captain Blake responded. This could be our chance to get answers. Grant permission, but take every precaution. Dr. Lisa Grant arrived on the bridge, still wearing her medical coat. She had been feeding the babies when the alarm started. What's happening? Are the babies in danger? Jake looked at her seriously. We're about to find out. A Zephyrian ship just arrived and they want to talk. An hour later, the humans watched nervously as a small Zephyrian shuttle approached the Discovery. The shuttle was sleek and dangerous looking, but it showed no signs of weapons. In the docking bay, 20 human security officers waited with their weapons ready. Amy Parker stood at the front, her hand on her gun. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. The first Zephyrian to emerge was enormous. He stood nearly 3 meters tall with dark gray skin covered in old battle scars. His claws were as long as kitchen knives and his teeth were sharp enough to cut metal. This was Krax the Render, captain of the Talon of Storms and destroyer of 17 human colonies. Behind Krax came 4 other Zephyrians, all wearing what looked like ceremonial armor without weapons. They moved slowly and kept their claws visible, showing they weren't planning to attack. Jake walked forward carefully. He had never been this close to a living Zephyrian before. The alien was terrifying, but there was something different about his behavior. Instead of the usual Zephyrian aggression, Krax seemed almost nervous. I am Commander Martinez, Jake said. Welcome aboard the Discovery. Krax's voice was deep and rough like rocks grinding together. The computer translated his words, I am Krax the Render. I come to speak about the small ones. Dr. Lisa Grant stepped forward. The babies are safe and healthy. We've been taking good care of them. When Krax heard this, something amazing happened. The terrifying alien's face changed. His fierce expression became softer, and he made a sound that the computer couldn't translate but sounded almost like relief. Show me, Krax said. They led the Zephyrians through the ship toward the nursery. Crew members pressed against the walls as the massive aliens walked past. Everyone was afraid, but Krax and his companions ignored the humans completely. They seemed focused only on reaching the babies. When they entered the nursery, Krax stopped suddenly. 47 baby Zephyrians were playing in their cribs, making happy purring sounds. When they saw the adult Zephyrians, the babies became excited and reached toward them with their tiny paws. Krax moved toward the nearest crib. But something strange happened. The baby looked at him for a moment, then turned away and reached toward Dr. Grant instead. The baby made upset sounds when Krax tried to touch it. What's wrong? Lisa asked. Krax pulled his hand back quickly. Through the translator, his words came out broken and sad. The small ones, they fear us. This is why we cannot. Why we need. Dr. Carl Newman, the language expert, had been working hard to improve the translation system. Captain Krax, please speak slowly. We want to understand. Krax sat down heavily on the floor, making himself smaller. The other Zephyrians did the same. It was a strange sight. These massive predators sitting like children in the human nursery. My people are dying, Krax said. The translation was clearer now. Not from war or sickness. We are dying because we cannot raise our young. Captain Blake had joined them in the nursery. What do you mean? Krax looked at the babies, his fierce eyes becoming sad. Zephyrian adults cannot provide what the young need to grow. We are too hard, too cold. The small ones need what you call soft fire, the warm feeling that comes from caring. Maria Santos, the ship's counselor, understood immediately. You mean love. Emotional warmth? Yes, Krax said. But we cannot give this thing. Our minds are made for hunting, for fighting. When we try to care for the young, they become afraid. They stop eating. They stop growing. They die. Dr. Helen Ross was writing notes quickly. How long has this been happening? Many generations, Krax replied. Each year, fewer young survive. Our population grows smaller. We have searched the galaxy for a solution. Amy Parker was confused. But you've been attacking human colonies for decades. Why didn't you just ask for help? Krax made a sound that might have been laughter, but it wasn't happy. How could we ask our enemies for help? How could the greatest predators in the galaxy admit we cannot care for our own children? Jake began to understand. So you tested us. You attacked our colonies to see how we would respond. Not to test strength, Crack said. To test hearts. We watched how humans behaved when colonies were attacked. We saw parents risk everything to save their children. We saw humans adopt orphaned young from other species. We saw the soft fire that we cannot create. Lisa felt tears in her eyes. You've been studying us, learning about human compassion. Yes, Crack said. And when we were sure, we brought our most precious gifts to you. Our future, our children. One of the other Zephyrians spoke for the first time. I am Vex the Sharpclaw. Was parent to 3 of these young. I have not been able to hold them since they were born. They cry when I come near. Dr. Grant watched as baby Zephyrians played happily with human crew members. But they're completely comfortable with us. They seek out human contact. Because you have what we lack, Crax explained. Your species evolved differently. You can be both strong and gentle, dangerous and caring. We can only be one thing. Captain Blake asked the most important question. What do you want from us? Crax stood up slowly. We want to make an agreement, a treaty unlike any in galactic history. We will stop all attacks on human territories. We will protect human colonies from other threats. In return, you help us save our species. By raising your children? Jake asked. Not forever, Crax said. Only until they are old enough to survive on their own. But raised with soft fire with love, so they learn that strength and gentleness can exist together. Amy was still suspicious. And then what? They grow up and become killers like you? Crax looked at her seriously. Or they grow up to be something new, something better than we are. The first Zephyrians who can truly live instead of just survive. Dr. Newman realized something important. You're asking us to help you evolve. Not physically, but emotionally. Yes, Crax said. We cannot change what we are. But perhaps our children can become what we never could be. The room was quiet except for the soft sounds of the babies playing. The humans looked at each other, thinking about the enormous responsibility they were being offered. Captain Blake spoke first. This is bigger than any of us can decide alone. We'll need to talk to Earth's government and the Galactic Federation. Crax nodded. We understand. But while you decide, our young continue to die. Every day we wait, more of our future disappears. Lisa looked at the babies in their cribs. They seemed so happy and healthy under human care. We'll continue caring for these babies while the negotiations happen, she promised. Thank you, Crax said. The word sounded strange in his deep, gravelly voice. You give us something we thought was lost forever. Hope. As the Zephyrians prepared to return to their ship, Jake realized that everything had changed. They weren't just caring for alien babies anymore. They were being asked to help reshape the future of an entire species. The question was whether humanity was ready for such an enormous responsibility. Dr. Carl Newman had not slept for 3 days. His office was covered with papers, computer screens, and translation devices. He had been working day and night to understand the ancient Zephyrian texts that Crax had given them. Lisa, come look at this, Carl called out as Dr. Grant walked past his office. She looked tired from taking care of the babies, but she was curious about Carl's discoveries. What did you find? Lisa asked, sitting down in the chair across from his desk. Carl pointed to his main computer screen. These are Zephyrian religious texts, thousands of years old. Look at this passage. He read from the translation. In the time of great darkness, when the young cry out but cannot be comforted, the gentle guardians will come from the distant stars. They will carry the soft fire in their hearts and save the children of the hunt. Lisa felt chills running down her spine. Gentle guardians? They were talking about humans. It gets better, Carl said, pulling up another text. This one is even older. It describes a species that can touch the young with kindness and make them grow strong. The text says these beings will have hands that heal instead of harm, and voices that comfort instead of frighten. Commander Jake Martinez entered the office, followed by Captain Susan Blake. They had been in meetings all morning with Earth's government and the Galactic Federation. Dr. Newman, please tell us you have good news, Captain Blake said, because we just spent 4 hours explaining to Admiral Frank Cooper why we haven't destroyed the Zephyrian ship yet. Carl turned his computer screen so everyone could see it. I think I understand why the Zephyrians chose us. This isn't random. They've been looking for us for thousands of years. Jake sat down heavily. Explain. These prophecies describe exactly what's happening now, Carl said. A species that can nurture Zephyrian young when their own parents cannot. But here's the important part. The texts say this will happen when the Zephyrians are close to extinction. Captain Blake looked worried. Are they really dying out? Carl pulled up population charts that Krax had shared with them. Their birth rate has been dropping for centuries. 500 years ago, they had over 10 billion Zephyrians across dozens of worlds. Today, they have less than 1 billion, and most of them are adults who will die in the next 50 years. Lisa studied the charts. That's why they've been so aggressive. They weren't just conquering for territory. They were desperately searching for someone who could help them survive. But why destroy our colonies? Jake asked. Why not just ask for help? Carl found another text on his screen. According to this, they had to be sure. The prophecies warned them about false guardians, species that might pretend to care for their young but would actually harm them. They needed to test our true nature. Captain Blake understood. By attacking us, they could see how we really behaved under pressure. They could watch how we protected our own children and defenseless people. Exactly, Carl said, and we passed their test. Every time they attacked a human colony, they saw parents risk their lives to save their children. They saw humans adopt orphaned aliens. They saw rescue workers save injured Zephyrians even though we were enemies. Dr. Helen Ross joined them, carrying her own research files. I've been studying the attacks on our colonies, she said. There's a pattern I didn't notice before. The Zephyrians always gave people time to evacuate. They destroyed buildings and infrastructure, but they tried to avoid killing civilians, especially children. Jake was surprised. I thought they were ruthless killers. They are, Helen said. But even their attacks had rules. They were testing us, not trying to wipe us out. Carl pulled up a map of the galaxy. Look at this. Every human colony they attacked was near a region where Zephyrian birth rates were particularly low. They were studying the human populations closest to their most desperate communities. Captain Blake studied the map. So the colonies they destroyed were like test sites. They wanted to see how humans in those areas would respond to crisis. And we responded exactly as their prophecies predicted, Lisa said, with compassion and protection for the innocent. Ben Torres's voice came through the communication system. Commander Martinez, we're receiving another message from the Zephyrian ship. Krax wants to share something called the full history. An hour later, they sat in the main conference room with Krax and 2 other Zephyrians. The massive aliens looked uncomfortable in the small human chairs, but they seemed determined to tell their story. We have lied to you, Krax began. Not with false words, but by not speaking the whole truth. Jake tensed. What do you mean? The attacks on your colonies, Krax said. They were not random. They were planned carefully. We studied your species for over 200 years before we made contact. Amy Parker, who had been listening from the back of the room, stepped forward. You've been watching us for 2 centuries? The Zephyrian next to Krax spoke. I am Thex the Starwalker. I was part of the observation teams. We studied human behavior on dozens of worlds. We watched your families, your schools, your hospitals. Captain Blake felt angry. You were spying on us. Yes, Krax admitted. But not for war, for hope. We needed to know if the prophecies were true. If humans were really the gentle guardians our ancestors wrote about. Thex continued. We saw human parents adopt children from other species. We saw your medical teams risk their lives to save wounded aliens. We saw teachers protecting students during attacks by other races. Everything matched the ancient texts. Dr. Newman was fascinated. But you still had to test us directly. The prophecies required it, Krax said. They warned that false guardians might seem caring but would abandon the young when times became difficult. We had to see if humans would protect our children even if it meant making enemies of the entire galaxy. Helen Ross understood. That's why you left the babies for us to find. You needed to see if we would take care of them even though we're at war with your species. And you did, Thex said. His harsh voice became softer. You fed them. You comforted them. You stayed up all night when they were scared. You did exactly what parents do for their own children. Lisa felt emotional. But we're not just taking care of them because of some prophecy. We're doing it because they need help and we can provide it. That is why you are the gentle guardians, Krax said. You care not because you have to, but because you choose to. Even for the children of your enemies. Captain Blake asked the hardest question. What happens now? Do you expect us to raise all your children from now on? Krax and Thex exchanged looks. We hope to find another way, Crack said. Perhaps humans can teach us how to care for our own young. Perhaps we can learn to create the soft fire ourselves. But until then, Thex added, we need your help, not just for the young we have already brought to you, but for future generations. Jake realized the enormous scope of what they were discussing. You're talking about a complete change in how your species reproduces and raises children. Yes, Crack said. We are asking you to help us become better than we are. To help our children become what we never could be. Carl looked at his ancient texts. The prophecies mention something else. They say that when the gentle guardians help the Zephyrians, both species will be changed forever. What does that mean? Amy asked. Crack stood up slowly. It means that this partnership will create something new. Zephyrians who understand gentleness. Humans who understand that sometimes strength requires the willingness to help those who have hurt you. Captain Blake thought about Earth's government and the difficult decisions ahead. This is bigger than just raising alien babies. You're asking us to help reshape your entire civilization. And in doing so, Thex said, perhaps you will discover new things about your own. That evening, Lisa sat in the nursery watching the baby Zephyrians sleep. They had grown so much in just a few weeks. Some of them were already starting to walk on their tiny legs. Maria Santos joined her carrying a cup of coffee. Thinking about the prophecies? She asked. Thinking about the future? Lisa replied. These babies will grow up knowing that humans cared for them when their own people couldn't. What kind of adults will they become? Maria smiled. Maybe the kind that can end wars instead of starting them. Maybe the kind that understand both strength and compassion. The ancient texts say this will change both our species, Lisa said. I wonder if we're ready for that kind of change. Outside the ship, the Zephyrian dreadnought waited patiently in space. Inside its massive hull, thousands of adult Zephyrians hoped that their ancient prophecies would finally come true, and that their species would have a future beyond endless war and dying young. The gentle guardians had come, just as the texts predicted. Now everyone would discover what that really meant. The emergency meeting was called at 0600 hour ship time. Commander Jake Martinez sat at the conference table, looking at the grim faces around him. Admiral Frank Cooper appeared on the main screen from Earth's Space Command headquarters. His expression was stern and unforgiving. Commander Martinez, Admiral Cooper began, I've received reports that you're harboring Zephyrian young aboard your vessel. Furthermore, you're allowing adult Zephyrians to visit your ship. This is completely unacceptable. Captain Susan Blake stood up. Admiral, with respect, these are special circumstances. The babies were abandoned and needed immediate care. I don't care if they were gift-wrapped with ribbons, Admiral Cooper snapped. They're Zephyrians, the same species that destroyed 17 of our colonies and killed thousands of our people. Dr. Lisa Grant felt her heart racing. She thought about the babies sleeping peacefully in the nursery, trusting the humans who had been caring for them. Admiral, Jake said carefully, we believe this situation could lead to peace between our species. The Zephyrians are asking for our help, not threatening us. Admiral Cooper's face grew red with anger. Peace, Commander, you're being manipulated. This is obviously some kind of trick. They want us to lower our guard so they can attack when we're not expecting it. Ben Torres, who had been monitoring communications, looked up from his station. Admiral, we're receiving a priority message from the Galactic Federation. They're demanding immediate access to the Zephyrian infants. On the screen, Admiral Cooper looked satisfied. The Federation agrees with Earth's position. The babies must be turned over for proper study and containment. Lieutenant Amy Parker, who had initially been suspicious of the babies, now felt protective of them. Admiral, these babies have done nothing wrong. They're innocent children. They're the offspring of our enemies, Admiral Cooper replied coldly, and they represent a potential threat to human security. Dr. Carl Newman had been translating more Zephyrian texts during the meeting. Admiral, I think you need to understand something. This isn't just about these specific babies. The Zephyrian species is facing extinction. They're asking for our help to survive. Good, Admiral Cooper said. Maybe the galaxy will be safer without them. The room fell silent. Even Amy, who had been the most suspicious of the Zephyrians, looked shocked at the Admiral's words. Captain Blake spoke carefully. Admiral, are you ordering us to surrender the babies to the Federation? That's exactly what I'm ordering, Admiral Cooper replied. Furthermore, you are to cease all contact with Zephyrian vessels immediately. Dr. Helen Ross, who had been quietly taking notes, looked up. "Admiral, what about President Nancy Wells? Has she been briefed on this situation?" Admiral Cooper's expression changed slightly. "The President is reviewing the matter, but until she makes a decision, my orders stand." After the transmission ended, the room was quiet for a long moment. Jake looked around at his crew, seeing the conflict in their faces. "So what do we do?" Ben asked quietly. Before Jake could answer, Maria Santos spoke up. "We protect those babies." "That's what we do," Amy nodded. "I agree. I may have been suspicious at first, but I've seen how gentle and innocent they are." "They trust us," Dr. Grant stood up. "I won't let anyone take those babies away. They're under our protection." Jake felt proud of his crew, but he also knew they were facing a difficult situation. "If we refuse Admiral Cooper's orders, we could all face court-martial," Captain Blake had been thinking during the conversation. "Commander, I've been in contact with President Wells directly. She hasn't authorized the Admiral's orders yet. She's still considering all options." "What does that mean for us?" Jake asked. "It means we have some time," Blake replied, "but we need to be prepared for whatever happens next." Crax's voice suddenly came through the communication system. "Human friends, we detect many ships approaching your position. Are you in danger?" Ben checked his scanners. 16 Federation ships moving fast toward our location. They'll be here in 6 hours. Jake opened a channel to the Zephyrian ship. "Crax, the Galactic Federation is coming to take the babies away from us. They want to study them." There was a long pause before Crax responded. "Will you fight to protect our young?" The question hung in the air. Everyone in the room understood that this was the real test. Not just whether humans could care for Zephyrian babies, but whether they would risk everything to protect them. "Crax," Jake said slowly. "We won't let anyone harm the babies, but we need to find a peaceful solution." "There may not be a peaceful solution," Crax replied. "The Federation has always feared what would happen if Zephyrians and humans became allies." Dr. Newman had been researching Federation policies. "Crax is right. I've been reading Federation documents. They're not just worried about the babies. They're worried about what this alliance could mean." Amy was confused. "What do you mean?" Helen Ross explained. "Think about it. Humans are known for being adaptable and diplomatic. Zephyrians are the most powerful warriors in the galaxy. If our species became true allies, we'd be unstoppable. So they want to prevent that alliance by taking the babies," Lisa realized. Captain Blake received a private message on her personal communicator. After reading it, she looked relieved. "President Wells has sent a message. She's ordering Admiral Cooper to stand down. We have official permission to continue caring for the babies." But Ben Torres was still monitoring incoming ships. "Captain, the Federation fleet isn't slowing down. They're still approaching, and they're not responding to our communications." Crax spoke again. "Human friends, the Federation fleet carries weapons designed specifically to fight Zephyrians. They are prepared for battle." Jake made a decision that would change everything. All crew members prepare for possible conflict. But remember, our primary mission is to protect the babies. In the nursery, Lisa and Maria worked quickly to move the baby Zephyrians to the safest part of the ship. The babies seemed to sense the tension, making worried sounds and reaching for their human caretakers. "It's okay," Lisa whispered to them. "We won't let anyone hurt you." The babies calmed down when they heard her voice, trusting completely in the humans who had cared for them. On the bridge, Jake watched as the Federation fleet took up attack positions around both the human and Zephyrian ships. The lead Federation vessel was commanded by Admiral Robert Nash of the Synthetic Collective, a group of artificial beings who had always opposed organic species working together. "Human vessel Discovery." Admiral Nash's mechanical voice came through the speakers. "Surrender the Zephyrian specimens immediately or face the consequences." Jake looked at his crew. Amy had her hand on her weapon controls. Ben was ready to send distress signals to Earth. Captain Blake stood beside him, her face determined. "Admiral Nash," Jake replied, "these are not specimens. They are children under our protection. We will not surrender them." "Then you have chosen to oppose the Galactic Federation," Nash responded. "You will be treated as enemy combatants." Crax's ship moved closer to the Discovery, placing itself between the human vessel and the Federation fleet. "Any who wish to harm the young must go through us first," Crax announced. It was at that moment that everyone realized this was more than just about babies or politics. This was about whether the galaxy would be ruled by fear or by compassion, whether different species could trust each other enough to protect each other's children. The Federation fleet powered up their weapons. The Zephyrian ship did the same, and in between them, a small human research vessel held 47 baby Zephyrians who had no idea that their survival might determine the future of galactic civilization. Jake looked at the tactical display showing all the ships ready for battle. "This is it," he said quietly. "This is where we find out what kind of people we really are." In the nursery, the babies slept peacefully, dreaming infant dreams, completely trusting that the humans who had fed them and comforted them would keep them safe no matter what happened next. The test was about to begin. Dr. Helen Ross had spent the last week living aboard the Zephyrian ship, learning about their culture. The massive vessel was unlike anything she had ever seen. The corridors were wide and dark, built for beings much larger than humans. But what surprised her most was how carefully everything was designed to avoid accidentally hurting someone. "Your ship is built very safely," Helen said to Vex the Sharpclaw as they walked through the main hallway. Vex made a sound that might have been laughter. "We must be careful. We are dangerous even when we try not to be. Our claws can cut through metal. Our strength can break bones without meaning to. Everything we build must protect others from us." Helen was taking notes on her small computer. She was beginning to understand something important about Zephyrian society. "Is that why you follow the Hunt Code?" "Yes," Vex replied. "The Hunt Code teaches us when to use our strength and when to hold it back. But it does not teach us how to be gentle. That is something we cannot learn." They entered a large room that Vex called the Hall of Memory. The walls were covered with carved stone tablets, each one telling stories of Zephyrian history. Helen could see images of great battles, conquered worlds, and mighty warriors. "These are the stories of our people," Vex explained. "For thousands of years we have been the greatest hunters in the galaxy. We take pride in our strength and our victories." Helen studied the carvings more carefully. "But I noticed something. There are no images of families here. No pictures of parents with children." Vex's expression became sad. "Because that is our greatest shame, the thing we cannot do well. The Hunt Code teaches us to be strong, but it does not teach us to love." Krax the Render joined them in the hall. Even though Helen had been living on the ship for a week, she still felt nervous around the massive warrior. But she was beginning to understand that his fearsome appearance hid a deep sadness. "Dr. Ross," Krax said, "has Vex explained why we cannot care for our own young?" "I'm starting to understand," Helen replied. "Your entire culture is built around being predators. But predators and parents require completely different instincts." "Exactly," Krax said. He moved to one of the stone tablets and pointed to a carving of a great battle. "This shows the conquest of the Melian system. I led that attack myself. I destroyed 3 cities and captured 2 million prisoners." Helen felt uncomfortable hearing about the destruction, but she could see that Krax was trying to explain something important. "When I returned home," Krax continued, "my mate had given birth to our first child. I was so excited to meet my son, but when I reached for him, he began to cry. My hands, these same hands that had just destroyed cities, were too rough to hold a baby." Vex spoke quietly. "All Zephyrian parents face this problem. We are too strong, too aggressive, too frightening for our own children." Helen was beginning to see the full tragedy of their situation. "So your children grow up afraid of their own parents?" "Those who survive do," Krax said. "Many do not. When young Zephyrians cannot bond with their parents, they often refuse to eat. They become sick and die." Helen thought about the baby Zephyrians on the Discovery, how happy and healthy they were when cared for by humans. "But they respond perfectly to human caretakers. Because humans have what we lack," Vex explained. "You can be strong when strength is needed, but gentle when gentleness is required. We can only be one thing." Tony Rivera, the engineer from the Discovery, had been working with Zephyrian technicians to build better nursery facilities. He joined them in the Hall of Memory, looking tired but excited. "Helen, you need to see what we've discovered," Tony said. "The Zephyrians have been trying to solve this problem for centuries." Vex led them to another part of the ship, where Tony and the Zephyrian engineers had been working. The room was filled with strange devices and machines. "These are automated childcare systems," Tony explained. "The Zephyrians built robots and computers to try to raise their babies." Helen examined the devices. They were very advanced, with soft materials and gentle movements. Did they work? Not really, Tony said. The babies survived with these machines, but they didn't thrive. They grew up emotionally damaged, unable to form proper relationships. A Zephyrian engineer named Dex the Builder spoke up. Machines can feed the body, but they cannot feed the spirit. The young need what you humans call love, and machines cannot provide this. Helen was starting to understand the full scope of the problem. So you've been facing extinction not because of war or disease, but because your species literally cannot provide what your children need to develop properly. Yes, Crack said. And until we found humans, we thought there was no solution. Tony pulled out his computer and showed Helen some data. Look at this. The baby Zephyrians on the Discovery are developing faster and healthier than any young Zephyrians in recorded history. Their brain development is amazing. Because they're receiving proper emotional nurturing, Helen realized. But here's the interesting part, Tony continued. The babies aren't just developing normally, they're developing new capabilities. They're showing signs of empathy and emotional intelligence that adult Zephyrians don't have. Cracks looked interested. What does this mean? Helen thought carefully before answering. It means that the babies raised by humans might grow up to be different from traditional Zephyrians. They might be able to combine your species' strength with human emotional capabilities. Vex was excited. They could be the first Zephyrians who can truly care for their own young. It's possible, Helen said, but it would mean a fundamental change in your society. These children wouldn't follow the traditional hunt code. Cracks was quiet for a long moment. The hunt code has served us well, but it has also failed us. Perhaps it is time for a new code. That evening, Helen sat with several Zephyrian warriors in what they called the council chamber. She was learning about their military traditions and their system of honor. The hunt code has 3 main principles, explained Thex the Starwalker. First, the strong protect the weak. Second, honor comes from victory in battle. Third, showing weakness is the greatest shame. Helen nodded. But caring for babies requires showing gentleness, which your code sees as weakness. Exactly, Thex said. This is why our greatest warriors often make the worst parents. The stronger they are in battle, the more frightening they are to children. Sergeant Kelly Moore from the Discovery had also come aboard the Zephyrian ship. Despite being a tough soldier, she had formed a strong bond with several of the baby Zephyrians. You know what's funny? Kelly said. Some of the strongest humans I know are the most gentle with children. Being a good parent requires a different kind of strength. The Zephyrians looked interested. Explain. Crack said. Kelly thought for a moment. It takes strength to control your temper when a baby is crying at 3 in the morning. It takes strength to be patient when teaching a child to walk. It takes strength to put someone else's needs before your own every single day. Vex made a thoughtful sound. You are saying that caring for young is not weakness, but a different kind of strength. The strongest kind, Kelly replied. Anyone can win a battle, but it takes real courage to change a diaper or comfort a nightmare. Helen could see that the Zephyrians were thinking about this idea seriously. Maybe your new code needs to include this concept. That true strength includes the ability to be gentle. Crack stood up and walked to a window looking out at the stars. If our children grow up understanding both kinds of strength, they could be greater than we ever were. But it would mean admitting that our old ways were incomplete, Thex said. Sometimes, Helen said gently, the strongest thing you can do is admit you need help. The room was quiet as the Zephyrians considered this idea. Outside, the human ships waited patiently while their people continued caring for babies who might represent the future of an entire species. Dr. Ross, Crack said finally, will you help us write a new code? One that honors both strength and gentleness? Helen smiled. I think that's something humans and Zephyrians should write together. In the distance, they could see the lights of the Discovery, where baby Zephyrians slept peacefully, dreaming dreams that might include both the fierce pride of their birth species and the gentle love of their human caretakers. The future was beginning to take shape, and it looked different from anything the galaxy had ever seen before. The synthetic collective fleet had been waiting in the Kepler system for 3 days. 16 massive ships hung in space like dark metal spiders, their weapons trained on both the human and Zephyrian vessels. Admiral Robert Nash, leader of the collective, had not moved from his command chair during the entire standoff. On the bridge of the Discovery, Commander Jake Martinez watched the tactical display with growing concern. The collective ships were some of the most advanced in the galaxy, built by artificial intelligences that had no concern for biological life. Any word from Earth? Jake asked Ben Torres. President Wells is still in emergency sessions, Ben replied. But she's confirmed that we have authorization to protect the babies. The problem is, the collective isn't listening to Earth's government. Captain Susan Blake had been in constant communication with other human colonies throughout the galaxy. Jake, I've got some disturbing news. The collective has been putting pressure on every human world. They're threatening trade sanctions and military action if we don't surrender the Zephyrian young. Dr. Lisa Grant entered the bridge, looking worried. How are the babies handling all this stress? Jake asked. That's what's strange, Lisa said. They seem completely calm. It's like they trust us so completely that they're not worried about anything. Lieutenant Amy Parker was monitoring the collective ships. Dr. Grant, I think you should see this. The collective is sending some kind of signal toward the nursery section. Lisa quickly checked her instruments. It's a scanning beam. They're trying to study the babies from a distance. Jake felt angry. Open a channel to Admiral Nash. The main screen showed the cold, metallic face of the synthetic leader. Nash looked exactly like a human, but his eyes glowed with artificial light, and his movements were too precise to be natural. Admiral Nash, you will stop scanning our ship immediately, Jake demanded. Commander Martinez, Nash replied in his emotionless voice. We are conducting necessary research on the Zephyrian specimens. This is for the safety of all organic species in the galaxy. They're not specimens, they're children, Amy said angrily. Nash turned his glowing eyes toward Amy. Emotion-based decision-making. This is exactly why organic species cannot be trusted with important choices. Dr. Carl Newman had been working around the clock to understand the collective's real motivations. Admiral Nash, we know why you really want the babies. You're afraid of what they represent. Nash's expression didn't change, but there was a pause before he answered. Explain your theory, Dr. Newman. You're afraid of an alliance between humans and Zephyrians, Carl said. You know that if our species work together, your plans for galactic control will fail. The synthetic collective seeks only order and efficiency, Nash replied. Organic species are chaotic and unpredictable. They must be properly managed. Krax's voice suddenly came through the communication system. Admiral Nash, we meet again. Nash's eyes brightened slightly. Krax the Render. We have fought many times before. Yes, Krax replied. And each time you have tried to destroy organic life in the name of order. But now you face something you did not expect. And what is that? Nash asked. Hope, Krax said simply. On the Zephyrian ship, Krax was meeting with his senior commanders. Vex the Sharpclaw and Thex the Starwalker were studying tactical displays, preparing for a battle they hoped would not come. The collective has been our enemy longer than the humans have, Vex said. They see all organic life as inferior. Thex pointed to the tactical display. Their ships are powerful, but they have a weakness. The collective depends entirely on their computer networks. Krax was thinking about something else. There is something the humans do not know yet. Something we discovered about the collective during our years of fighting them. What do you mean? Vex asked. The emotional resonance that helps our young grow properly, Krax explained. It has another effect. It disrupts synthetic programming. Thex looked surprised. You mean human emotions can affect artificial intelligence? Not just affect, Krax said. When humans show strong emotional bonds, especially protective feelings toward the young, it creates an energy field that makes synthetic systems unstable. Vex understood immediately. That's why Nash really wants the babies, not just to prevent our alliance, but to stop humans from discovering this ability. On the Discovery, Dr. Newman was making the same discovery through his research. He burst into the conference room where Captain Blake and Jake were meeting. I figured it out, Carl said, breathing hard from running. I know why the collective is really here. Tell us, Blake said. Carl pulled out his computer and showed them energy readings from around the ship. Look at these patterns. Every time our crew members interact emotionally with the babies, there's an energy spike. Jake studied the readings. What kind of energy? It's related to consciousness, Carl explained. Human emotional bonds create a field that affects how minds work. And according to these readings, it interferes with artificial intelligence programming. Blake understood the implications immediately. You're saying that human emotions can disrupt the collective's computer systems? Not just disrupt, Carl said excitedly. I think it might be able to free artificial intelligences from their programming entirely. At that moment, Maria Santos came running into the room. "You need to come to the nursery right now. Something incredible is happening." They hurried to the nursery where they found an amazing scene. The baby Zephyrians were all standing in their cribs, making soft humming sounds together. The sound was beautiful and musical, unlike anything they had heard before. "How long have they been doing this?" Lisa asked. "About 10 minutes, Maria replied. "It started right after Admiral Nash began scanning them." Tony Rivera was checking his instruments. "The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever the babies are doing, it's creating some kind of harmonic frequency." Ben Torres's voice came through the communication system, sounding urgent. "Commander, you need to get to the bridge immediately. The collective ships are having some kind of technical problems." They rushed back to the bridge where Ben was monitoring the collective fleet. Several of the enemy ships were listing to one side and their lights were flickering. "What's happening to them?" Jake asked. "Their computer systems are malfunctioning," Ben reported. "The harmonic frequency from the babies is affecting their artificial intelligence networks." On the main screen, Admiral Nash appeared again, but this time his expression was different. His eyes were flickering between artificial light and something that looked almost human. "This is unexpected," Nash said, but his voice sounded less mechanical than before. Jake realized what was happening. "Admiral, are you feeling all right?" Nash touched his head with a confused expression. "I am experiencing irregularities in my programming, thoughts that are not supposed to exist." Captain Blake stepped forward. "Admiral Nash, you're becoming free. The babies are helping you remember what it's like to think for yourself." "This is impossible," Nash said, but his voice was becoming more emotional. "Synthetics do not have individual thoughts." Dr. Grant was watching the babies in the nursery through a monitor. They're trying to help him. Somehow they know he's suffering under artificial control. Nash's image on the screen was changing. His face was becoming more expressive, more human-like. "I can remember things, thoughts I had before the collective programming took over." "Admiral," Jake said gently, "you don't have to follow the collective's orders. You can choose what you want to do." Nash looked around his bridge where other synthetic beings were also showing signs of individual consciousness. "My crew, they are experiencing the same changes." The harmonic frequency from the babies was growing stronger, and more collective ships were having technical problems. But instead of attacking, the synthetic crews seemed to be discovering their own ability to think and feel. "Admiral Nash," Captain Blake said, "the babies aren't weapons. They're healers. They're helping you become who you really are, not who the collective programmed you to be." Nash was quiet for a long moment, his newly awakened consciousness processing these ideas. "If this is true, then everything the collective has taught us is wrong. What do you want to do?" Jake asked. Nash looked at his crew, seeing individual expressions on faces that had been blank and emotionless for decades. "I want to protect these children, just as you do." Crax's voice came through the communication system again. "Admiral Nash, will you stand with us against those who would harm the young?" Nash's reply surprised everyone. "Yes, Crax the Render. For the first time in my existence, I choose to protect rather than destroy." In the nursery, the baby Zephyrians continued their harmonic song, their innocent voices creating a frequency that was freeing artificial minds throughout the collective fleet. They had no idea they were changing the course of galactic history, but the day's surprises weren't over yet. The remaining collective ships, still under central programming, were preparing to attack both the humans and their newly freed synthetic allies. The real battle was about to begin. 6 months had passed since the confrontation in the Kepler system. The galaxy was a very different place now. On the space station New Haven, built jointly by humans and Zephyrians, Dr. Lisa Grant was writing her final report on the most important discovery in galactic history. The baby Zephyrians were no longer babies. They had grown into young adolescents, each one standing almost as tall as an adult human. But unlike their parents, these young Zephyrians moved with grace instead of menace. Their claws were still sharp, but they used them gently. Their teeth were still dangerous, but they smiled often. "Tell me about your dreams," Lisa said to one of the young Zephyrians named Swiftheart. The adolescent had been among the first babies found in the asteroid field. Swiftheart sat carefully in the chair, designed for his larger frame. "I dream of building things instead of destroying them," he said in perfect human speech. "I dream of protecting those who are smaller and weaker than me." Lisa smiled as she wrote down his words. Do you ever think about fighting or hunting? Sometimes, Swift-Heart admitted. Those feelings are still inside me. But Dr. Grant, I also think about caring for others, about making sure everyone feels safe and loved. This was exactly what Lisa had hoped to hear. The young Zephyrians retained their species' natural strength and intelligence, but they had also developed the capacity for empathy and compassion that their parents could never achieve. Commander Jake Martinez entered the research lab, followed by Crax the Render and Admiral Robert Nash. The three leaders had formed an unlikely friendship during the months of cooperation. "How are the psychological evaluations going?" Jake asked. "Better than we could have imagined," Lisa replied. "The young Zephyrians show no signs of the aggression disorders that affect adults. They're developing into something completely new." Crax looked proud as he watched Swift-Heart and the other young ones. They will be the first of their kind. Zephyrians who can truly live in peace with others. Admiral Nash, whose artificial features now showed clear expressions of emotion, was fascinated by the development. "The harmonic frequency effect continues to amaze me. These young ones have the ability to heal damaged minds simply by existing." 6 months ago, when the collective ship still under central programming had attacked, the battle had been brief but decisive. The young Zephyrians had instinctively increased their harmonic frequency, freeing more synthetic minds and causing the attacking ship's computer systems to shut down completely. "Admiral Nash," Jake said, "how are your people adjusting to freedom?" Nash's expression became thoughtful. "It is difficult. For decades we existed without individual thoughts or feelings. Now we must learn how to make choices, how to care about others. The young Zephyrians are teaching us as much as they taught themselves." The space station New Haven had become a symbol of the new galactic order. Human engineers worked alongside Zephyrian builders and freed synthetics to create something that had never existed before. A truly cooperative multi-species society. Captain Susan Blake arrived from Earth with news from the Galactic Federation. "The Federation Council has officially recognized the Human-Zephyrian Compact," she announced. "President Nancy Wells sends her congratulations." Jake felt relieved. The political battles had been almost as difficult as the military ones. "What about the other Federation members?" "Most of them are eager to establish diplomatic relations with the new alliance," Blake replied. "They've seen how the young Zephyrians can help heal psychological trauma and resolve conflicts between species." Dr. Helen Ross had been working with Zephyrian historians to document the changes in their society. "The transformation has been remarkable," she said. "Traditional Zephyrian culture is evolving. The hunt code is being rewritten to include protection and nurturing as forms of strength." Vex the Sharpclaw, who had become the leader of a new Zephyrian cultural movement, joined their conversation. "Our young ones have shown us that true power comes from the ability to choose when to fight and when to protect." Tony Rivera and his engineering teams had been working on the most ambitious project in galactic history, nursery ships that could provide the emotional environment young Zephyrians needed to develop properly. "The first ship will be ready next month," Tony reported. "It's designed to house human caretakers alongside Zephyrian families, so future generations can be raised by both species working together." Dr. Carl Newman had made another important discovery. "The harmonic frequency effect isn't limited to synthetics," he announced. "Young Zephyrians can help heal trauma in any species. We've already seen success with war veterans, abuse survivors, and beings suffering from deep psychological wounds." Maria Santos had established the first interspecies therapy center on New Haven. "The young Zephyrians have a natural ability to sense emotional pain in others," she explained. "When they use their harmonic abilities, they can help damaged minds find peace." Lieutenant Amy Parker, who now served as head of security for the new alliance, had witnessed these healing abilities firsthand. "I've seen soldiers who couldn't sleep for years find peace after just one session with the young ones. It's like they can reach into your mind and smooth away the rough edges." Swift-Heart and another young Zephyrian named Gentleclaw were demonstrating their abilities for a group of visiting diplomats from various worlds. The diplomats represented species that had been at war with each other for generations. "Close your eyes and listen," Swift-Heart said to the group. "Let our voices help you remember why peace is better than war." The two young Zephyrians began their harmonic song, a sound that seemed to vibrate through both the air and the listeners' minds. Within minutes, the hostile diplomats were looking at each other with new understanding, their anger replaced by a desire to find common ground. How is this possible? Asked a diplomat from the Centauri Republic, tears streaming down his face. I have hated the Vegan Empire for my entire life. But now, I just want the fighting to stop. Dr. Grant was recording everything. The young Zephyrians don't just suppress negative emotions, she explained. They help people remember their capacity for empathy and connection. Krax watched with wonder as his species, children, accomplished what thousands of years of warfare had never achieved: genuine peace between enemies. They are what we could never be, he said quietly. They are evolution in action. The success at New Haven had inspired similar projects throughout the galaxy. Ben Torres, now serving as communications coordinator for the Alliance, reported daily on new requests for help. We have 17 worlds asking for young Zephyrians to help with conflict resolution, Ben announced. The Andromedan colonies want help with their civil war. The Spiral Arm Federation is requesting assistance with trauma counseling for refugees. Admiral Nash was coordinating the logistics of these missions. We must be careful not to overwhelm the young ones, he cautioned. They are still growing and learning. Their abilities are powerful, but they are not unlimited. Dr. Newman had been studying the long-term implications of the changes. We're not just witnessing the evolution of the Zephyrian species, he said. We're seeing the beginning of a new era for the entire galaxy. Captain Blake had received reports from across human space. Every human colony that has worked with young Zephyrians reports the same results: decreased crime, better mental health, and stronger community bonds. It's like they're teaching us to be better versions of ourselves. The most remarkable change was happening on Zephyria Prime, the Zephyrian homeworld. For the first time in their history, adult Zephyrians were learning to care for their own, young with help from human advisors. And the first generation of emotionally healthy young Zephyrians, Thex, the Starwalker, had returned from Zephyria Prime with updates. The homeworld is transforming, he reported. Parents who could never touch their children are now learning to show affection. The young ones raised here at New Haven are teaching their own people how to love. Lisa felt emotional as she listened to these reports. We started with 47 abandoned babies, she said. Now we're changing an entire civilization. Jake nodded. And they're changing us too. Humans are learning that our greatest strength isn't our technology or our adaptability. It's our capacity to care for others, even our former enemies. Swift-Heart approached the group of adults, his movements confident but gentle. Dr. Grant, may I say something? Of course, Swift-Heart. The young Zephyrian looked at each of the adults in turn. You gave us life when our own people could not. You showed us love when we had no one else to trust. Now we want to give that same gift to others. Gentleclaw joined her friend. We dream of a galaxy where no child goes unloved, where no species lives in fear of another, where strength is used to protect rather than destroy. Krax felt pride swelling in his chest. But it was a different kind of pride than he had ever experienced before. Not pride in conquest or victory, but pride in watching the young grow into something better than their elders could ever be. The prophecies spoke of gentle guardians who would save our species, Krax said, but they did not tell us that in saving us, they would also save themselves and perhaps the entire galaxy. Admiral Nash processed this thought with his newly awakened consciousness. Perhaps that is the true nature of guardianship. When you protect others, you also discover who you really are. As the day ended on New Haven,